Hello and welcome. This is the Healthified Mother podcast. My name is Corey, and this is my lovely wife, Christy. And we have a beautiful guest, Sarah Vazani, with us today. Sarah is a master herbalist, a homesteading mama of 3, going on 4, who left the world of corporate chemical engineering to take time to heal and find answers to chronic health concerns and challenges with pregnancy and postpartum. And now her deepest passion is coaching others towards a healthier lifestyle through plant-focused nutrition, herbs, and awareness in movement. Thank you, Sarah, for being on with us today.
Thanks, I'm excited.
So, Christy, can you tell us a little bit of how you got to know Sarah?
So we had a mutual friend connect us, and Sarah does like amazing stuff with women, pregnancy, all of that, herbs. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist. So I thought, oh, this is a great connection. So, yeah.
All right. And Sarah, tell us a little bit more about your background.
How far do you want to go?
Well, I mean, your intro that you sent us talked about the corporate life. Tell us a little bit about what corporate life was and the experience of leaving it. What was that like?
Sure. So apart from growing up off and on overseas, my lifestyle was pretty conventional until, relatively recently. I grew up, the high achiever. I wanted to be an engineer from a pretty young age, and chemical sounded great because it was the hardest one. So let's do that. And and I thought, someday I'm going to make my own shampoo and that'll be so fun. And so I did that. I got my engineering degree, and I started working for a major consumer products company as an engineer. And I had a lot of fun learning how to design experiments, run experiments, analyze data, present data, all the different things you can do with data that have really informed how I read, studies and reports and things like this. I started to notice some things that kind of bothered me. And I also, my lifestyle caught up with me. I've had some challenges from an early age that we never really had answers to, like migraines and tummy troubles. And they were either things that I just thought were normal, or it was like, well, you're really stressed and you're not sleeping very much, so of course you have those problems, and but I just never, I was just still on that like high achievement ladder for a long time. And then finally my body said no in a big way. And I was in a decently bad car accident. And it was like, okay, we need to reevaluate here. And at the time of that accident, my first child was a year, and I was a full-time working mom, and that was really rough. And my husband was a stay-at-home dad, and that was really rough for him. And we kept trying to make it work because logically, trying to create like the best life for our children financially and everything, logically, we should have kept doing that, but it wasn't working for us. I feel like I got a little off in the weeds there, but so
it's always
yeah. So I finally was like, okay, I need to go on medical leave. I need to figure out what's going on with me, why I'm not healing. I had all this chronic pain. I still had all the gut issues. The migraines were now daily instead of, biweekly or monthly or, and it was not sustainable. And so I went to all these different specialists. They didn't really answer my questions of why is this happening? Can you explain this? How do we solve that problem from like a micro level, right? I'm a chemical engineer and I love biology. Like talk to me about the biology of the migraine. Well, they don't really have answers. It's just, here's 5 different drugs you could try. And oh yeah, that'll help with the anxiety too. And oh yeah, that'll help with the depression too. Never mind the side effects. So even though at the
those
time
old side effects.
yeah. So even though at the time I was still very like conventional, I wasn't using any herbs. I was starting to cut down on like my sugar and soda intake. But I pretty much trusted the system, and yet they had no answers. And somehow, I feel like Heavenly Father gave me this gift of just feeling like that's not quite right. Like that's not quite what I'm looking for. Oh, we don't know why it's happening. Just take this pill. It'll solve all your problems. It's like, and it wasn't even, we tried to
Now, can I pause you there and just get a clarification?
yeah.
Like, you had the question in your head, but did you take their advice and take the pills?
I didn't. I just didn't
you
feel
did?
good
Okay.
about it.
You didn't
Yeah.
feel okay.
Yeah, so I just never started. I mean, as I was growing up, I would try different migraine medications, and some of them would work a little bit. But I never took something like consistently. Because nothing really worked anyway.
So you were afraid to have the same old, like that it was just gonna be another create more problems, maybe? Was that what you kind of felt like? If I start this, I might end up on a road that brings me more problems? Was that something you were concerned about?
At the time, I didn't even consider that. At the time, I didn't even know that that was how the body works. Like I would completely have that concern now and try to educate people on that idea now. But at the time, it just didn't feel right. It just didn't make sense.
Fair enough. Like you had a feeling and you followed it. It's okay. That's awesome.
Yeah, which, I'm a, engineer brain, but I was like, that doesn't feel right.
That's a hard thing for, like, in today's society, that's a hard thing to do, to follow something that's like, that little voice inside of us that we feel we know what the right choice is, but up here there's a dissidence. Like, it's really hard for us in current modern society, I feel like, to follow that inner voice.
Yeah, well, and I'm the kind of person who likes to understand something very deeply. And I wasn't given anything that I could really chew on and say, yes, that makes sense. In the same way that I would, go and study the processes at the manufacturing plant that I was trying to optimize and, figure out at a deep level what's happening here, and therefore what do we need to do about it.
Right.
I wasn't getting that from the system. And so I was just like, okay, I'm going to hold that as an option. Right. Because I think the whole, sort of the counterculture movement of we need to stop shaming people for, taking medication for anxiety, depression. Like, yeah, we should never be shaming people. But at the same time, now what I know is there's so many better options.
Well, I'd say today, like, I'm excited to have you on, because simply today, what we're going to talk about, what I feel the goal of today's message, having you on, is to explore there are more than one option. The conventional route isn't the only route. There's more than one option. And, you have experienced and firsthand knowledge as to the route of taking herbs and using herbs as medicine, which is age proven, like, I can't say that correctly, and I can't think of how to say that correctly. Maybe you can put the words to it, but like, time proven, of any time proven method of healing, herbs have passed the test of time.
Absolutely. Yep.
So how did you get into herbs? Like, how did that experience lead to herbs?
Yeah, well, it's funny because, like you said, herbs they've been with us from the very beginning. Like, they are, apart from, just faith and
The placebo effect, faith. Yeah, okay.
right, like apart from just asking God for healing, the herbs and our food are the first things that have been with us. They were our first medicine. They've been with us since the beginning. They are the most unadulterated form of medicine you can have. And so, ironically, in my you know, my time that I said I'm taking a break from work, and then I eventually left because I realized I just couldn't heal in that stressful environment and being surrounded by, honestly, just toxins all day. You know, either I could just be in the lab and send, or I could be at my desk and send someone else to the lab all the time, which is no fun. But anyway, so I needed to just leave. And I lost my train of thought. Give me a second.
So just your journey back to herbs, where you.
Yeah. So I just started searching the library catalogs for everything on the challenges I was having: gut health, migraines, anxiety, depression, pregnancy, and all these things. Again, I was about a year postpartum with my child, so I wasn't focused on the pregnancy yet at that time. It was just, how do I heal myself? But also, how do I learn how to take care of my young child in a way that will set her up for a better starting point? So I just started reading. And, you know, one book would say, well, look into these modalities. And so I would check out a new book on that modality, and I would just keep going, all the while feeling this growing certainty that one of these things I was supposed to become a teacher of at some point. And herbs were almost the very last thing that I studied, which is really funny now, because there was this somehow implicit message through my whole life to that point that herbs were at one time ineffective and at the same time very dangerous. So we don't mess with those. And yet, you know, the essential oil movement was going up strong. That was one of the first things that I started using, you know, chiropractic massage, acupuncture, all hypnotherapy, all these different things. And they all helped to a point. But it was when I started to find resources that I felt I could trust on the herbs. Like, that's when things really started turning around. And but like I said, it was it was one of the last things. And really it was finding a mentor or two who was really grounded in, this is what the herbs can do and this is what the foods can do. And I would say, well, what about this concern? What about that concern? And they'd be like, it's not that big of a deal, you know, like, this is all the red tape and the disclaimers and everything that has to go on the internet because of the powers that be and the governing bodies that be. And you know, when you dive into medical history, it's quite shocking, really, how we got to where we are. And it's not because herbs don't work. Quite the contrary.
Yeah, you know,
but that's a whole other
like
podcast, right?
100 years ago, or maybe 120 years ago, but within, you know, the early 1900s, that's what all doctors used. All doctors used herbs, and they might have used some other things like arsenic and mercury, and like, wow, what are you doing? But mostly they used herbs. And it wasn't until, you know, 1910, 1920, you know, that time when they started to revamp the whole medical system, call all of that quack stuff, and bring in all the petroleum-based medicines that we're still using today. And it's crazy because 100 years ago, that's what everyone was doing. All the doctors were doing that. Homeopathic doctors have been around, which is different than herbs, but homeopathy has been around since like the 1600s in amazing ways. You fixed the echo? But yeah, so yes, like, that history of being able to use, you know, let food be thy medicine, as Hippocrates said, right? That's what everyone did. Oh, you're sick, you need a bowl of chicken broth, you know, like, that's what everyone did. And then it switched. So yeah, it became
Christy,
weird and
I can't do anything about the echo because now it's you're the one echoing.
I know.
I would go ahead and get off and then click the link and join back in.
Well,
do you hear an echo, Sarah?
Just a little bit.
Well, you don't have an echo, Sarah, and the point is to have you talk. So we're just going to ask you questions and let you talk.
Okay.
But Christy, do you remember the name of that movie about the 1900 doctor?
mm-hmm.
And then
Running for Grace.
Did you hear about that movie?
I don't think so.
I think
if you ever want to expose someone to kind of what happened, Running for Grace is a great short story about how herbal medicine was trashed by modern medicine in a small town kind of way, and you can extrapolate that to the whole psyche of the modern medicine system and how it quashed. So a great little movie, highly recommended.
Okay.
So like you started reading about herbs, and did you get when did you decide for herbs to be like your thing?
Well, so I started reading about them, and anytime you start looking at something on the internet, you start having similar things like advertised to you, brought to your attention. And so I was keeping an eye out. A lot of the herbalists that were sort of getting their message out there, they still had a very MD-like presence. They were still very, very cautious. So, had plenty of things to share that were valuable and that I incorporated. But I found that with all of their caveats, when I would try their recommendations, I really didn't get any results because they had they had just dialed down that intensity so much because they were so cautious, if that makes sense. And so
they have too many constraints on themselves.
It's possible. Yeah. I mean, anyone, you always run the risk of losing your license, right? And even for me, like, in the state of Utah, I am a certified master herbalist. That is my master's degree, but I'm a teacher. I can't diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease. I'm a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, nothing I say has been evaluated by the FDA and et cetera. So it's really tricky, and every state's a little bit different. But especially if sometimes there are herbalists who they'll study the natural way, they'll grow up the natural way, and then they will go and get their naturopathic degree or their medical degree for the purpose of being able to help a broader audience, or have a license to touch, have a license to practice. It all depends on the state, but as soon as you do that, you are bound by even more
restrictions.
Yeah. So it's really tricky. And so because everyone was putting so many cautions out there, once again, it was like, I don't feel like I'm getting the confidence that I feel like I should have in using these herbs. And when I use them in the way they describe them, it's really not strong enough to get a result. And then other schools, they seem just a little witchy, and I'm a natural girl. I've been homesteading for 3 years. Like I love nature and grounding and being barefoot and have my huge garden and trying to, start a farm. But I'm not wanting to associate with witchcraft either. So it's an interesting, I was just waiting. I was waiting for the right one to pop in my lap. And finally, just in the course of actually moving out to our homestead, I discovered Dr. Christopher's School of Natural Healing. And, he was a Christian and has this incredible legacy. And the school was just so, it was grounded in that Christianity, and it was grounded in just a very practical, no nonsense of like, this is the herb It is safe. Here's how to use it. It's the best way I can describe it. But also, there's two different kinds of I don't want to say medicine, because again, that's a tricky word. But if you look at the two types of healers, we'll say you have vitalists and you have atomists. And I can't off the top of my head remember which ancient name was associated with each one, but Hippocrates was a vitalist. And so he believed that if given the right building blocks and environment, the body can heal itself. That's how it's divinely designed. And so we don't need to trick the body or do something to it or fix it in some way. We just have to give it what it needs to finish doing what it's trying to do. Whereas the atomist mentality is something has gone wrong and we have to force the body back into balance with something. And so you can have herbalists operating on either side of that. And Dr. Christopher operated on the vitalist side. So that was another thing that attracted me to that. And I said, okay. So it's a herbalism school grounded in Christianity and the belief that the body can heal itself, that we're not trying to trick it. We're just working with the body's incredible divine design. Yep, I'm going to start studying. And with every course I finish, I just like, yep, this is still the one I want to do. Of course, do I think there might be some gaps in my education? Is there more to learn? Of course, that would be the case with any program I would have done. And that's, the beauty of the rest of my life.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. And real quick, Christy, I want to, because I don't want to lose touch on this question that I have for, when did your own personal issues, your health issues, like what was that like for your own health journey along with your learning journey?
Oh boy. So I'd say it was about, let me do some quick math here. I mean, it's about a decade of the very beginning of starting to see some messages that kind of rang true with me in terms of like nutrition affects your health and beginning to make changes there. And then along with, starting to research all those things, I got really deep into Weston A. Price stuff at one point, and it was all helpful, but I would always hit a point where it was no longer helpful, or it would even start, like my health would deteriorate even more. I mean, my last pregnancy was my first like full-on Weston A. Price pregnancy, and it was my worst one so far. I had high blood pressure. I had severe depression. I was swelling like crazy, and my recovery was terrible. It's just like completely wiped out. I was like, what is the deal? I'm doing my liver, And but when I started studying with the school, and it was just like, as soon as I would find something in the required reading materials that applied to me, I would figure out how to immediately apply it to myself. And I would immediately get results. There's some things that aren't completely resolved yet, and I don't know, maybe they never will be. Maybe it'll be resolved tomorrow. Health, it's not just about the herbs. There's a lot going on here. But this system is just, it's worked really well for me.
Yeah. I like the different modalities. I feel like a lot of healthcare providers want to treat our body like a machine, and we need to like oil it, and we need to like change out the parts. Let's just give you a knee replacement, or they're just treating the body like a car or some kind of machine, whereas vitalists are treating the body like a plant or some kind of organic growing, an animal, etc. Like, let's put things in that can heal, right? So instead of trying to treat it like a machine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Christy, right now you have the worst feedback. I don't know why. Both you and I.
It could be worse. I've heard worse. It's okay.
We're just gonna power on because at least like we've used Zoom and there's the visual the resolution for Zoom is a lower quality than StreamYard is.
Okay.
It's just weird software thing going on here with the echoes. Like Christy and I are in different rooms, so typically it would be something associated with that, but I think it's just a software glitch right now.
Yeah.
So I remember listening to a podcast a while ago, and tell me if this has anything to do with what you've learned or what your opinion is on this. And these two, one of them, I don't know if he was a master herbalist, but they were talking about herbs, and I don't even remember their names or anything. It was like 2 years ago, and they were saying like one of them was saying how he believed that the earth is like in resonance with us, and it produces the plants more in abundance that we need. And his theory was that when you look around and you see what we call weeds, it's literally stuff like what's the one, the yellow flower? Dandelions. And he's like, you see dandelions all over the place. That's because the earth is trying to heal. Like it's giving us what we need, and we think it's a weed, and we're just like, pull it out, yank it out. And I don't know how to use dandelion. I think maybe I could make a tea out of it, right? But I remember that thought, but I have no idea how to put that into practice. But what do you think of that?
I absolutely agree. And that is also part of where I got the confidence to launch into my herbal studies, because my first mentor really was the teacher at the permaculture design course that my husband and I took together. It was 2 weeks in this place up in the mountains. We just took our newborn with us, and we're sleeping in a tent for these 2 weeks, learning about permaculture, which is not just about growing things, but that's where most people apply it. And again, it was Christian base, this particular course. It was incredible, the gospel insights that he brought into it. And he just started teaching us exactly what you just said. Like, the earth knows what it's doing. If there's bare ground, it's going to fill it with something that is going to heal the soil, and often is going to heal us if we partake in it. Everything it knows what it's doing. Even we had some fun with invasive species. That's a hot topic I could talk on for hours, but they everything has a purpose. And as a regenerative farmer or a permaculture gardener, your goal is to observe those natural patterns. How does nature do it? And then figure out, how can I help it along in a very natural way? So we need more compost, we need more mulch, we need more, etc. Companion planting, we get more diversity. Amazing things happen on the edges. It was learning these natural patterns that just felt so instantly right to my whole soul. That helped me, when I came across this herbal school, understand, yes, that fits those natural patterns. And that's whenever I come up against something that is new to me, there's so many people teaching about herbs now, which is fantastic. And everyone's going to disagree about something, at least one thing. And, people will ask me, well, this person said this and she's really popular. What do you think about that? And I'm like, well, I think she's wrong. Sorry. And really, for me, how I judge whether I'm willing to consider that thing that someone else is saying could be true, or I'm really not interested in investigating that further. It's all, how does it fit into a natural pattern that I understand, that I've lived, that I've observed? That's just what I go back to.
And would you say, like you've mentioned a couple times now, like you found these teachers and they were Christian based. Now, I'm just going to say why maybe to me that might be important. And you give your opinion on this, but like, I feel like my opinion on it is when God created the world, you know, you go back and read in Genesis, and if you read the story of the creation, when God said he created all the plants, he said they were good. He said that about all of them. And so at a fundamental level, you need to find teachers that have that same mindset, that what God created is good.
Mhm.
Is that something that you've seen in your teachers, in your mentors?
Absolutely. You know, especially the Dr. Christopher, you know, way of looking at things is that there are herbs out there that are poisonous, but we don't need to use them. Like, there are ways to use them, but there's plenty of other, as well as herbs that are addictive. There are ways that you can use those herbs that people, you know, swear by. It's helped them so much. But at the same time, there's so many other options that are local, right? That's the other thing. People like going for those exotic rainforest herbs or the Ayurvedic herbs or the Chinese herbs. It's all wonderful. But if you think about a desire to be resilient in your own environment, you need the things growing around you. I think a lot of people understand the idea of like raw honey, get it as local as you can, because it's going to have the local pollen, and it's going to give your body messages about your environment and how to adapt to it. It's the same with the herbs. And so the general message of like there are many herbs that are very safe, and they're all a gift. And then I think the other reason that I really try to stick to people who are rooted in Christianity with the herbs is that, you know, I'm really not interested in like spells or curses or rituals. I consider all of the herbs to be gifts from God that are simply tools to help bring us back to him, to work with him and the processes that he created in our body, to heal. Now, if I were to say echinacea is all you need, and you don't need to also have faith in using that echinacea, then I would be going against, you know, my personal principles. I have found that every time I involve God in the healing process and, you know, ask him for confirmation, do I have the right herb in this situation? Is this the right combination? Is this the right amount to give, and how often to give it? And if I'm really stumped, right, like with babies or children, it can be like, well, how the heck do I get this into them, you know, like and really involving Heavenly Father, you can just know, you can know what to do and feel confident in it in a very different way than, you know, I like I said, I haven't gone into the world of witchcraft, so I don't know. And I don't want to say they're all evil, right? Like it's in a way it can just be a different belief system, and there's people that call themselves witchy and they mean a very different thing than maybe what I'm saying it means here. But for me, I just want to make sure that I am always on the side with God, and that I am working with him through that healing. And just here's another tool that can be part of that process rather than a replacement for him.
I think that's really important. There's so many people who shy away from alternative medicine because they're afraid of replacing God. And I'm like, guys, you realize you can work with God. Like, there's no need to say, well, I don't need God's power anymore. I don't need a blessing anymore. I don't need, you know, to pray anymore because I've got herbs, or because I have, you know, chiropractic care, or, you know, like, what? Like, we can work with God. And when I work with him, like, I always pray and get in a state of like connection with God before I do any work with my clients. And I receive inspiration and revelation in helping. And I can't imagine how my practice would work if it worked at all if I try to cut him out.
Yep.
Do you have similar as to what Christy mentioned, experiences in your practice? To like when you're praying, like asking for guidance and
Oh yeah, I was just trying to think what I would say other than what I've already said about that.
oh,
Yeah, I mean, I have had. I think sometimes, so this is a fun one. A lot of people will try drinking dandelion tea. Let's say, oh, someone said dandelion tea would be good for my liver. I'm having some issues that might indicate liver problems. I'm going to start drinking dandelion tea, and they have like a teaspoon every 3 days, and um, my brain just turned off again. Give me a second. Third trimester problems. Here we go. Um, oh yes, okay. So they'll take it not very much, or let's say someone is really trusting whoever they consulted with, and they're going to have 3 cups of dandelion tea a day, and they know how to brew it right, and they're doing that every day. I always take a break on the 7th day, which I think is a really beautiful principle that I learned at that school as well. But let's say they're doing it 6 days a week, every day, 3 cups a day for like 3 weeks. And they come back to whoever they talk to and they're like, I'm just not sure. I don't feel a difference. I don't think herbs work. And they stop. And a week later, they're like, oh my gosh, I feel horrible. We don't know that something's working until we kind of give up on it, and we realize that we actually were feeling better, but we just moved on with our lives because we were feeling better because it wasn't dramatic enough. And that can sometimes happen, I think, with this whole partnership with God in using the herbs or the nutrition or whatever else. There's so many wonderful things that sometimes I will think, oh, my child has this issue. This is the herb for it. We're just going to do it. And I forget to pray over it, or I just forget to consult. Um, and um, and I'll just be like, man, this really isn't working. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot this like super important part, and I will pray and something else will come to mind, whether it's just, well, you were doing it every hour but you really need to do it every 15 minutes, or you need to add this one in, or well, you forgot to apply heat over that compress or something like this. I've found that when I ask, it always comes. And when I don't, that's when things sometimes feel like they don't work. Um, not that not that herbs don't work on their own, because they just naturally have these compounds in them that give messages to our bodies. And if you know give them to like animals, say, like, they haven't been taught to pray, oh, that maybe they have, maybe they have some kind of angelic teaching that I don't know about, but they don't, the placebo effect has nothing on them, right? Like that's and so you give a dog this thing and it works inherently. But I think as humans, we have a very different journey in life where,
more complicated.
yeah, where it's really kind of the point to always come back to our Father.
Well, and there's whether you believe in God or not, like there's some part of us that's supernatural. Like there's some part of us that's inexplicable. Where does, even if you don't believe in God, where did the genius of Beethoven, where did the genius of just, you look at some of the most amazing people in history and the things that they could do, like it doesn't make sense that it just was like all up here uh, it just doesn't make sense. So I think it's a pretty easy thing to say, whether you believe in God or not, there's some part of us that is just genius, that's supernatural. So it's consulting that part that, as a Christian, yeah, it's definitely what I believe is supernatural, is my connection to God and my ability to receive answers from Him, for sure. Let's see.
I feel like working with herbs is as a holistic nutritionist, right? It's so important to do that. But let's say that I work with herbs, I drink a lot of teas, and I use tinctures and all these things. And then I also like eat lots of fried foods and, drink soda and like never exercise, right? Like, it's so important to look at the body as a whole. And I think that's where, we differ from like allopathic medicine, where it's like, just take this pill and your migraine will go away. Just take this pill and your depression. Like, don't change your diet. Don't stop eating those foods. Don't extract yourself from a toxic environment. Like, just take this pill and you'll be fine. Like, but I'm not fine. And now I have to take 5 more pills to counter all these side effects and everything else. And if it was like, I think there's so much wonderful stuff in allopathic medicine, but because it's compartmentalized and used in like, I'm an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and I don't do anything with the feet because that has nothing to do with the ear, nose, like everything is compartmentalized when our bodies are a whole. And maybe something with the feet is affecting our ear, nose, and throat. Maybe something with our gut is affecting our brain. Maybe, like there's all sorts of things that if we try to compartmentalize and just, well, I just use herbs and diet doesn't matter. Or I just use, some drugs and all these other things don't matter. Like, we're doing ourselves a disservice, right? We're not able to receive as many benefits. And so I think for me, I'm like looking at the body as a whole, and okay, I'm taking these herbs now, and now I'm noticing that I should lay off the potato chips, or and maybe I would have a better result in, these herbs will be able to go farther, right? And just having the building blocks that we need isn't enough if we don't remove the toxins that are causing the illness in the first place. So removing toxins and using herbs, nutrition, all of that, it is so, like, we've seen over and over and over again, people healed of all sorts of things that there's no cure for, except that person was cured and that person was cured, and well, but there's no cure for it. Okay. So just combining and viewing the body as a whole being, I think, is absolutely key. And I love how you were talking about that. Like, oh, maybe I need to do this extra thing. Like, maybe herbs isn't all I need here. Maybe I need to do, some heat with the herbs or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, 1000%. I mean, I had a brief, we'll call it a mutual interview, with another person who was promoting something good. But I started talking about how I worked, and this person said, well, I don't believe in ever taking anything away from someone. No, we're just adding in the good. We're never going to take anything away. And I just thought, well, psychologically, if you can present it that way of, hey, I'm not gonna say you have to quit this and you have to quit this and you have to quit this immediately, but as you add in the good, you naturally want less of the other. Like, that's fair, but I really think it's doing a disservice if I don't tell someone, hey, you can take all the burdock root you want to cleanse your blood, but if you're still eating, like you said, fried foods and sugar and tons of red meat, I'm sorry, your blood's never going to get clean. And you're just going to say herbs don't work. It wasn't the herbs. It was you. It was what else you were putting in your body that weren't letting the herbs work. And yeah, it's the same with like, and this is why I really like to spend, like a full hour with my clients, because it's like, I need to know about your whole lifestyle. Are you sleeping? Are you drinking water? What kind of electromagnetic frequencies are you constantly surrounded by? What kind of toxins are you exposed to on a daily basis? And I know firsthand how overwhelming it can be when you leave that world of everything's fine and just do what everyone says to do and you'll be healthy, or when you have a problem, go to the doctor, take this pill, it's fine. And suddenly you start learning about all these things that are keeping you ill. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is too much. I wish I didn't know. It can be really intense. And so that's where, again, like having somebody that you can talk through all of this with, who's been there and can look at your life with you and be like, okay, what is your next one little step? Like, what feels possible? Do that step so that you feel more capable of making these other changes. Because, okay, you're never going to be perfect in terms of like what you're exposed to, what you're putting in your body. We don't want toxic perfectionism, but there's a lot more you can do than you realize, and figuring out that right path for you, of just setting yourself up for success.
My question for you is like, how has this pregnancy been different than your Weston A. Price pregnancy? Because I had the same thing. My pregnancy with, I don't know, like probably my 6th and 7th pregnancies were kind of Weston A. Price pregnancies. They weren't that great. They were not terrible, but they weren't that great. And then my 8th and then 9th, which is my twins' pregnancies, incredibly better, like so much better, because I switched to like a whole food plant-based, like medical medium style, getting away from like a lot of meat and dairy and desiccated liver, cod liver oil. Like,
oh yeah,
first of all, like those foods don't even taste good, and you have to like gag them down, and then you're thinking, but it's good for me, but it's good for me. But when I realized like it wasn't even working, it didn't seem to be good for me, I had no trouble giving all that up. I was like, yay, I'm so happy I can eat fruits and vegetables. Like, I would eat that than drink a spoon of cod liver oil, because it's supposed to be good for me, right? And I did a ton of fermenting. And not that I think it's bad, but it was like, just eat the fresh fruits and vegetables. Like, they're better than when they're fermented. I'm like, oh, well, that's cool, because that's a lot of work that I was putting into constantly fermenting beet kvass and sauerkraut.
yes.
So I would love to hear how like this pregnancy has been different than your last pregnancy.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I love that you shared your own experience, because everyone assumes that the older you get, the worse your pregnancies will be. And it's what so many people experience too. I'm like, this is my first, like, technically I'm a geriatric pregnancy, which is hilarious. Like, I'm not old. And so many people that I know and love, they've had that experience of like, I'm just too old for this. This is just awful. And it's completely different. I still have things pop up, and I still have things, like I said, that I've been working on, that for a while I was like, well, I can't get pregnant yet because I haven't detoxed this thing, or I haven't fixed this thing yet. And I just can't get, it was like this obsessive, like, I needed a good health coach, but I didn't have one. And so like, just finally realizing, like, and connecting again with God and with my husband, like, is it time? Oh my gosh, it's time. Okay, I have to let go of wanting things to be perfect before I get pregnant again. And so there are things that I'm still working on, but then there's also like random little things that pop up because you're pregnant and your body's shifting, and it's just what it does. And it's just a new message, that, maybe you need a little more of this or a little less of that. And that's okay. Like, I feel like pregnancy is like a crash course in listening to your body and adjusting to it. It can be, right? If you take it that way, it can be a crash course in that. or it can be a crash course in life is horrible and pregnancy's stupid, right? Like,
God is
like,
cruel.
yeah, like I'm never doing this again. Like,
How come the men don't have to carry the baby? Yeah. Like it can be that, but it can also be like, wow, this pregnancy or this birth is better than my last one, and I'm older, and so yeah.
Yeah. So I have to say, so Dr. Christopher, he was Whole Foods plant-based before it was cool. And I and he kind of taught what's called the mucusless diet, which is very similar. It's a lot more raw, I'd say, than what I see most Whole Foods plant-based people doing. But the principles are similar. It's similar enough that that's basically what I say I recommend is that style, because it's easy to just look it up and read about it right now. It's kind of having a moment. And again, the crucial thing here is it's not just plant-based. We're not just going to go get some highly processed replacement vegan food. It's whole food. Like, we're trying to eat the plant foods in their most natural state and learning how to eat more and more things raw. Like you, I used to like obsessively ferment all the things, and I still do that as a preservation method. Like, as I'm more in the homesteading, I'll do that over canning any day. But sometimes freezing might be a better option, or dehydrating might be a better option, and all these things. So eating this way, and I was eating this way for about 2 years before I became pregnant, and I was using the herbs. I was really getting my colon working again, which is, I can't even tell you like how fantastic it is to have a working colon. And most people don't realize that theirs isn't working. Like, there is a beautiful life on the other side of constipation and chronic diarrhea. Like, it's not normal and it's not healthy. And you have control, like, you have power. There's things you can do that are actually healing that process, not needing to have an enema every other day, because that's helpful, but that's for emergencies. If you need an enema every other day, that means you're still not healing your colon. And things like this. Anyway, so getting things like, I feel so much lighter. I have more energy. I'm not going to say I never get depressed or I never feel anxious. Like, that's a lot of inner work to do. It's not just about your brain chemistry and your gut health, but those things are very related, all three of those things. It's just a million times better, because there's so much less yuck that I have to deal with, because my starting level of health was so much better from the beginning. Because like I said, no matter where you start health-wise, when you're pregnant, your body's going to go through changes, and it's naturally going to start slowing down your digestion, and you're going to naturally be a little more tired because you probably should rest a little more, and your nutritional needs are higher. These are just messages to adequately grow and shelter that new little life inside of you. And so there's always going to be something to work on every step of the way while you're pregnant. And I just found that, this time really starting from a much better place of being more cleansed, we'll say more detoxed, and bringing in these lighter foods, these deeper nutrition foods. It's 1,000% worth it.
And so you don't use a prenatal vitamin, correct?
Correct. I do use a capsule. I buy the powder and encapsulate it myself, of Dr. Christopher's Vital Herbs. Mm-hmm. I would call that my prenatal vitamin. And I do take chlorella and spirulina. But that's like my vitamins. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been at least 2 pregnancies, maybe 3 pregnancies. I think my last 3 pregnancies, where my midwife said, "Oh, don't bother with a prenatal," because I would take them, but I always felt sick, and I would I didn't necessarily throw them up. Sometimes I did, but I would just feel nauseated. And so it was like, okay, I have to do this, like this, working it. And she was like, don't even take that. Like your body can't even absorb that very well. Just take this tea. And she had created a tea that she recommended for all of her clients. And I started taking that. And I was not a tea person. In fact, I was like an anti-tea person. Like, tea is disgusting. Why would you want to drink grass water? Like, that is so gross. And but she was like, well, it's going to be really good for you. And so I started by just kind of like gagging it down, and then it grew on me, and now I love tea and I drink it all the time. And that's all I use for the prenatal. And I also do vitamin C in a powder form, and I do some spirulina and other things like that as well. But and smoothies and food. But as far as a prenatal, I get my iron and most of the stuff that I get from tea. And that's been a game changer for me, because I'm like, why was I torturing myself, feeling nauseous and sick all the time, thinking I was giving my baby all these nutrients? And yet I could have just been drinking a tea and giving them more nutrients in a more absorbable way and not feeling sick.
Yes, it's so true. And I mean, that is, if I say like those are my vitamins, but the tea is my core, like that is non-negotiable. The days, or dare I go a week without making my tea because I just let myself get caught up in other things, I feel it, even at the level of health I'm at, because that tea, it doesn't have to digest. It can just go straight to your bloodstream in a very safe way. Like they're all in natural compounds that your body knows exactly what to do with. It doesn't have to process it into something else. It doesn't have to, try to get it out. And if it can't get it out, stick it in your elbow and cause arthritis later.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
It's not clogging all your lymph nodes and you're feeling sore under your arms, or, yes, exactly. But you make your own pregnancy tea, correct?
Yeah. And I now offer it on my website. Is that okay if I?
Yeah.
Absolutely. What is your website?
There?
Go ahead and shout it out.
Yeah. So when like I said, the herbs were kind of like the last thing that I researched, which again is still cracks me up. But one of the first things I did was say, oh, I need to pay attention to what I'm putting on my body. And so I ditched anything with perfume or fragrance in it. And at the time, I mean, like I said, this was like 10 or 15 years ago, like you couldn't buy natural lotion anywhere. And so I just started making it. And that's just all I've used since then, and learned how to make more and more things. And some of my family and friends started trying it and they were like, oh, I want one. And so fast forward to today, herbalembrace.com is where I sell my handmade skincare and herbal teas. And I just launched 2 prenatal teas. One of them is specific for women who have, more severe, moderate to severe reproductive challenges, who need a little extra healing in that area.
So something
Honestly,
like PCOS or
exactly.
Yeah.
Endometriosis. Again, I can't say it's for those.
Right.
But those herbs have thousands of years of historical use for those conditions, in being beneficial. And so that's what I call my fertility tea. But it's, even if you're not trying to conceive, if you are having reproductive issues, it's quite powerful combination there. And then I have what I'm calling my pregnancy tea, which is basically a multivitamin tea for pregnant women, or preconception. There's this it's really quite funny because I don't know if you ever followed, well, maybe I shouldn't say specific influencers or people, but there was one person that I started learning from, who, she was very Weston A. Price. Most of them are. And she was where I learned about red raspberry leaf tea from, which, like, if if you're looking for a prenatal tea and it doesn't have red raspberry leaf in it, run away, because there's something wrong with that person if they think that's a prenatal tea. Like, you must have a red raspberry leaf. But oh yeah, so she was talking about how, you know, it's great for drinking from like the middle half of your pregnancy on, and then make it really strong for your birth, and it'll help you have a more effective birth. No, this is not just for helping your contractions along. Like, this is vital nutrition for any woman, but especially a pregnant woman. And there was this whole fear of like, well, if it helps contractions during delivery, then if you drink it in your first trimester, you're going to get a miscarriage. No, this has been used for thousands of years.
Yeah.
For men and women, every age, every stage of life, as a highly nutritious thing. This is, again, the beauty of when you use an herb in its wholesome form, like a tea or a tincture or a dried powder, your body knows what to do with it. And if there's not some reason that miscarriage maybe needs to happen, right? Like, if this pregnancy is not viable and the body needs to go through that process, maybe it could help it along, but it's not going to kill your baby or expel it from the uterus if everything is fine.
Yeah.
It's just nutrition. It's just vitamins and minerals.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and there are some herbs that they don't recommend using during pregnancy because they do have the ability to put you into labor or contractions or whatever. And then they recommend them later on during pregnancy. Can you speak to any of those that you would not take at the beginning?
Yeah, so pennyroyal is one of those that historically people tried to use it. It's in the mint family. All the other mints are great during pregnancy, but pennyroyal it has been used historically by women trying to abort a pregnancy. And so, you know, if you use any herb, if you abuse any herb, yes, there is a potential to cause problems. But and so that is one that, you know, you're not going to find that in a prenatal tea. Now, in Dr. Christopher's 6-week birth prep formula, that's for the last 6 weeks of pregnancy. It does include pennyroyal, but it's in combination with other things.
Yeah.
And so that combination, again, informs the body what to do with it. And it's just going to help your body prepare for birth, but it's not going to make you go into labor 6 weeks early.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just one example. Otherwise, there are, like, if we just go with like the abortifacient herbs, you know, that's what people are most concerned about. Will this cause me to lose my baby? Many of them honestly have a long history of failure in being used for that purpose intentionally. And people go back to the herbalist and they're like, it didn't work, I'm still pregnant.
Yeah.
But there are some people who completely abused the herbs and they were doing some other things or in combination with pharmaceuticals where they did cause a pretty serious problem for themselves.
Right. Yeah, that's been my experience, is like it would take a lot to cause harm. Right. And so if it's in a prenatal tea, if it's, because I've had friends who are like, oh no, I can't take that. And I'm like,
right,
it's going to be okay, you know, but they have heard some story somewhere, you know, someone say that black cohosh or, you know, whatever. Like, oh, no, can't take that. And I'm like, okay, but let's look at some more facts, right? And I feel like it's, especially when it's made and created by a master herbalist, like they know what they're doing. They're not going to suggest something that is going to harm your body, harm your baby, etc. And so, yeah, you always have to use your own intuition and inspiration. But I feel like herbs and things get a really bad rap because people are terrified of anything that could potentially harm their baby, and yet
Of course.
they'll take Tylenol, they'll take ibuprofen, they'll take all sorts of things
Every day for years.
every day, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, let's shift this, right? Let's help them see, like, if you're taking some of these things, you probably won't need that Tylenol anymore. I think this is going to start healing you. So those migraines or those back pains or the kidney, whatever, you've got going on, is going to be healed, and you're not going to need those pain meds, etc. So yeah. Shift that view and understanding.
And we're kind of talking about risks and things like that, and I suspect someday soon the system will require water bottles to have a warning label. I mean, water can kill you. Someday someone, you can die drinking too much water. So like, why doesn't water have a warning label? Everything's going to have a warning label at some point. Because everything can kill you. Anything and everything can kill you used wrongly. So we're past our hour. It's been absolutely wonderful talking with you, Sarah. I want to ask one last question, if that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I could keep talking forever. This has been fun. I'm kind of disappointed we're over.
I know, but we all have lives to get back to. But I just want to ask, like, for a pregnant woman, if they were to come to you and like look to becoming a client of yours, what kind of things do you do to work with, and what kind of things can you help with pregnancy and in pregnancy? Like, what does that look like, you helping out a pregnant woman as a new client?
In terms of what kind of challenges we can take care of, or like the process of that?
Yeah, like what kind of benefits do you help them achieve in working with them? Like what kind of stuff can they see as a benefit of working with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the things that I've learned and experienced and tried on my friends,
yourself too, right?
And myself, yes. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, like, the best time to take back an unhealthy pregnancy, the best time to create the potential for like the most comfortable, healthiest pregnancy you can have, the healthiest baby you can have, the best birth outcome, your best recovery period, and postpartum and breastfeeding. It's like way before you get pregnant. So I love it when somebody comes to me and they say, I've had 3 horrible pregnancies. I know there's another baby waiting to come, but I am so scared. Like I can't go through that again. And I'm like, let's do this. Okay. Like, let's talk about, what are you eating right now? What's your lifestyle like? And what are your challenges? And there's different cleansing programs that we can go through. There's different rebuilding programs that we can go through. Everyone needs something a little bit different in terms of, this person needs a lot of cleansing versus this person really doesn't need very much, but they really need to get renourished now, and so I just love, like, my engineering brain is just like, oh boy, like we get to create a strategy, and working with people to be like, okay, let's get your body ready to undergo that kind of endeavor. Like, pregnancy is a big deal. But then also, if someone's struggling with infertility, or like severe reproductive malfunctions, like the things Christy mentioned, like PCOS, endometriosis, and just inflammation, there are some wonderful protocols that we can go through before you even get pregnant. That said, there is so much you can do while you are already pregnant as well. We have to modify some things, and the same with breastfeeding. We have to modify some things, or there's certain cleanses you really don't want to do, but there is a lot that you can do to start, let's say, balancing your hormones, re-nourishing your body, cleansing if you need to. One brief side note that this, I feel like this just illustrates the point so well of like, you can't always just say never take this herb during pregnancy, because Dr. Christopher had people that he helped with severe blood problems, or think about like Rh factor incompatibility. When that baby's born, it needs a transfusion. Like, these are extremely dangerous, sensitive processes, right? The birth is extremely risky. And, we don't hear about this as much these days because they have certain drugs for this, but he was able to actually work with those pregnant women, having them do cleanses, even blood cleansing, which we don't usually do when we're pregnant. We usually say like, no, let's wait on that. And even while you're breastfeeding, let's wait on that, because there is a risk of those toxins detoxing into the baby. But if you're in a state of your blood is already so toxic, what is safer? Which one is safer? Is chemo safer, or is burdock root safer? Either way, we've got to cleanse something. And so it always comes back to that the rules aren't as hard and fast as a medical textbook would like them to be, and that's part of why they don't really like the herbal process. But and so there's always something you can do. And so, like I said, we look at your whole lifestyle, your current nutrition, and how well do you already understand herbs? Do you know how to make a tea? I have online courses at everydayinexperiment.com for people that are completely new to herbs and don't even know how to make a tea, or don't know how to choose between a tea and a tincture. And those are available anytime. You don't have to consult with me. You can just sign up for that. But that's really what I do, is I just work with you, figure out where you at and how do we help you meet your immediate goals. But bonus, your long-term goals will start to happen as you work through those immediate goals. And then we can just build on it.
I think that's so beautiful, because there's so many women who don't feel very much hope, right? They want another baby, but I teach pain-free birth, and I'm creating a course to teach how to have a pleasurable birth, right? And there's so many women who are like, well, that's nice for you, but I'm high risk, and I have, and all my babies have been, and they list all these issues, and they feel like that's just me. That's just who I am. There's no hope for me. And in reality, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot that they can shift and change. And I've had friends who went from having high risk, super traumatic, really, like awful birth, to really calm, peaceful, like birth they could have had at home, like no complications, nothing. And like, why? Lifestyle change, right? Mindset change. There's so many things you actually can do. So don't write yourself off as a hopeless cause, a hopeless case, because while I have, whatever label you've been given, we can change that. And if that's something we want to change, I feel like God will bring mentors to us, bring teachers to us, bring information to us, and help us to receive what we want, right? Ask and it is given. He's going to bless us with everything that he can.
Absolutely. And that makes me think of, I've been in this belief space before. Can you hear me above that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been in this belief space before of, I've already tried everything. I really don't want to put hope, like I don't have energy left to put hope in anything else. And I just want to give anyone who feels that way a big ol' hug and say, I get it. you have not tried everything.
Yes.
Impossible.
But I
It's
get how that feels.
impossible to ever have tried everything.
It's impossible. It really is, you know, and even for myself, all the things I've studied, I'm always open to learning something new. And some things someone will say, well, have you tried that or have you tried that? And I get it that can be super annoying, right? You're like, I've spent years researching this, nothing has worked. Just shut up, you know, like just stop it. But again,
Well,
we're in this.
did you have that mindset yourself at some point?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It still happens to me from time to time. And I think part of that is that we're in this age of like the internet being our school, like where we learn things. And hey, you can learn everything that I could teach you on the internet. You can totally do that. You're smart, go do it. Fine. But when you're doing internet research, you're getting things piecemeal at best. And you may not understand how to fit all those pieces together to really have a system that works in your specific situation. And especially if you don't have someone that you are, you know, going back to and saying, well, I tried this and nothing happened. And that person can be like, well, did you notice your skin got clearer? That's not nothing. Something's happening. Maybe you just need another 6 weeks. Things like this. So I promise you, you have not tried everything, but I totally feel for you and I get it. And I get what it feels like to put your hope in something new and have it fall flat. And I'm not God and I don't want to pretend to be. And I cannot 100% promise that if you do whatever I say, you will be healed in 6 weeks. Like that's not for me to say. But I can promise you that I will do my best to teach you what I believe are true principles, and that in practicing at least some of them, you will find something improve.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
That's
yeah.
beautiful. Thank you,
That's
Sarah.
wonderful.
I appreciate it. It's been a really fun interview, and just yeah, just having like a perspective, because I have been more on the alternative medicine side like most of my life. I have family
Nice.
members who are on both. Like my dad was in like the run to the doctor for like everything. Like I have a headache, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna go to the doctor. And my mom was like, drink some water, you know? So I was kind of more like, I guess I took more after my mom. And um I still, you know, like with my first two births, they were hospital births, like, but I didn't like it. I didn't like how it felt. I was like, there's got to be a better way than this. And so early on, I feel like I was always kind of on that side. So to hear someone who wasn't, who was on the like, I've tried everything, nothing's going to help me, you know, all of that, switch to a completely different mindset is really like amazing. And I just love to hear what a turnaround and what an amazing journey you've had going through all of that to come back to, you know, something that you 10-20 years ago would have been like, that's ridiculous. And now saying like, oh wow, I am that lady, right? I think that's cool.
Yes, and honestly, all glory to God. Like I sometimes I look back at that journey and I'm like you were asking me at the beginning, Corey, like what were you thinking when it just didn't seem right to take that drug that they were prescribing you? And I was just like, there wasn't that much to it. It just felt wrong and I didn't really know why. And if you looked at my background, there's like no reason for it to feel wrong. And so I just consider it a blessing. And honestly, you know, I think God knows that I'm stubborn, and that's why I've had some things they're just really hard to work through, and then I still need to work through. But again, I think it's all a blessing so that I can learn how to go deeper. And in going deeper, I learned so much more about myself, and and like I said, those natural patterns, and therefore I can help the people around me. And so I just feel this huge responsibility and excitement and joy, that I can now share this with other people, because again, it makes no sense that I had this journey. And so I just thank God for it.
Wow. And one more time, where do people find you on social media? Where are you present there? And what are your websites?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny in Utah. So I have two websites, herbalembrace.com. Do you want me to type it out for you, and I can send it
You
so
can
you can
go ahead and spell it out. Yeah, spell it out
okay.
if that-
Okay,
yeah.
so herb, like the herb. So HERBALEMBRACE. So that's for the products. And I sell my handmade products, and I also sell I drop ship Dr. Christopher's products, and some other related products. So that's very helpful for my clients, that I can offer them discounts on that because I run my own store. And then my coaching website is everydayandexperiment.com, which would take another hour to explain where that name came from. But for now, that's the name of the website.
I think your
And
background, it makes perfect sense.
Making an engineer go from, predict and plan and analyze everything to take it with curiosity, wonder what'll happen this time, is a huge part of my journey. Anyway, but where I really love people to find me is my Facebook group, and it's called the Herb Powered Pregnancy, which again, like I said, it's for women who are thinking about planning to become pregnant all the way through postpartum and nursing, or even if you're just a mom or a grandma and you have loved ones that you want to learn more about herbs, like, they're all welcome. We have some men in there too. I'm like, great, do it.
I have some men in my Healthified Mother group because they have moms and sisters and wives and aunties and cousins and some woman in their life that they love. And so, yeah, why not? If they feel comfortable in there, that's awesome.
Definitely.
It has been delightful to have you on, Sarah. And honestly, we'll have to have you on again, because we didn't even really get into like what kind of actual like nitty gritty like remedies you talk about and recommend, and their benefits. Like it was just too fun of a conversation.
I know. I feel the same way.
Well, do you have any last words, Christy or Sarah?
No, I just appreciate it. And I think it's beautiful work that you're doing. And I am happy to collaborate with moms who all are helping other moms who have a journey and are like, why should you have to have this same journey? Like, let me take all that legwork out and you can benefit from what I had to go through, right? So beautiful.
Yeah. And I think about when I had my first baby, and we were, oh my gosh, what we struggled with. And so many people were like, well, just don't worry about doing that thing, or don't worry about doing that thing. You don't have to be the perfect mother. And I'm like, but something's wrong here. There's answers I need that you're not giving me. And it's just, it's not because they're evil. They just don't know. And, so that really drove home to me. It's not just that we shouldn't shame mothers for their choices, right? Like, some of the most controversial ones are like how you birth, whether you breastfeed or formula feed. And it's all like, well, we just need to stop shaming everybody and just say whatever you do is beautiful and wonderful. To a certain extent, I agree. But again, I want to go deeper, because all of these things are symptoms of women are not supported and empowered the way they used to be. We've lost so much wisdom and knowledge and support. And so I love that we've connected, and I'm super passionate about helping women support other women, and perhaps teaching their men how to support them better, and creating a better culture around, you support women, you're supporting the next generation, you're supporting the future.
I mean, a better culture around a connected family, starting family
absolutely.
is family. You know, like as soon as the marriage happens, yeah, there's the two become one, but the two become three as soon as the woman's pregnant.
Yeah.
So and starting the culture there
Absolutely.
of connection, of relatedness. So yeah, it's men and women can participate in that.
And that is something Corey is working on, is a course for men to help support their wives in. He's been
Love
reading
it.
me some of it, and I'm like, oh man, like this is amazing. Like women are going to be like, okay, I'm signing you up, honey. I don't care. I don't care if you want to do this or not. You know? And hopefully
I want you to do this for me during pregnancy.
Right. Hopefully they can get their man on board. But like it's things that he's learned now that in our first several births, it was like I didn't know how to explain what I wanted, and he had no idea. And I just wanted him to figure it out, read my mind, whatever. And he's
Read your
learned.
subconscious mind.
Right. He's learned so many things, and to share those with other clueless dads, like, wow. Amazing.
Yes.
Like for example, like one lesson we can just, you know, what is the nesting phase and how can a man participate in a way that creates connection to facilitate the feeling of you as the man looking forward to the baby coming because you're participating. Like like most of the time men are just like, okay, you go nest, like do whatever you're doing. But no, to actually take part in it as a subconscious signal to the wife or to her subconscious signaling, yes, I am excited as well for the arrival of our new child. Like have
well, and sometimes
that.
it's not even like just go do your thing. It's like, woman, stop touching my stuff, you know, like it's a fight. It's like
Yeah.
it's like he's annoyed with her nesting, and so then she's not only feeling no support, she's also feeling like
just understand, just for the man to understand that when a woman's nesting, what's going on, what is she looking for? And so your interactions with that isn't an interaction with her as your wife, it's an interaction with a mother. And the baby's not here yet, so a man doesn't get that.
Yes. Well, and I think the postpartum period as well, so crucial to support men in better understanding what's going on with your wife and what are maybe some things you shouldn't say and do. And yeah, there's actually there's a book called The Male Herbal. I'll send you a link to it that he actually talks about this, and it's so great about just how a man can better be part of this whole process. And again, not just from like an herbal perspective, but in creating a strong family and supporting the emotional journey that you both go on, right? It's not just the woman being pregnant, you're both on a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just oftentimes men don't realize it until the baby, they tell this. Like I know for me, I didn't know I was a father. Like I didn't know it until I saw the baby. So it's a hard thing for men to know they're a father already, you know, because it just doesn't click until you see the baby. Even when, you know, the baby's kicking and the mom, you know, you put your hand on the belly, it didn't click until it's like an emotional thing, like the baby arrives. But it's definitely something that men can start like, no, this is something I can work on getting before the baby comes.
Yeah, that's so great. I love it.
Anyway, so it's been great talking to you again, Sarah Virazi. Did I get that right? Vizani. Sarah Vizani. You're a wonderful guest, and I assume a great herbalist. I haven't taken any of your herbs, but I love everything you've mentioned. We're like all on board with everything you've said today. So thank you for being on with us, and we'll see you again, I'm sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much.